For the past few days, speculation is rife on Vladimir Putin's next move. Well, the Russian president seems to have made one now. Moscow-backed separatists in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region and pro-Kremlin authorities in Russian-controlled region of Kherson say that they will hold referendums on becoming a part of Russia from September 23rd to 27th. Votes will take place in the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk republics. Vladimir Putin recognized these territories as independent shortly before sending troops to Ukraine in late February. A vote will also be held in the southern Kherson region. Moscow's troops captured these territories in the early days of the Ukraine war. Following the announcements from other territories, Russian-held region of Zaporizhia also announced holding a referendum on some dates. Reacting to the annexation vote announcement, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov reiterated the Russian position that these territories must decide their own fate.
From the very beginning of the special military operation, and before it, we've been saying that the people of the respective territories should decide their own fate. The whole current situation confirms that they want to be master of their own fate.
Kiev, on the other hand, dismissed the vote as meaningless. Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says the vote is a sham and vows to eliminate threats posed by Russia. He adds that Ukrainian forces would keep retaking territory regardless of what Moscow or its proxies announced. The Ukrainian governor of Luhansk also condemned the referendum plan in occupied region, calling it fake. Listen in.
All they can do now is hold referendums in a hurry, certainly fake ones with some made-up results. They would do so in order to join occupied territories of Ukraine with the Russian Federation, so that they can do things later on. First, it is an attempt to establish the borders of these territories where the front line is. Second, it will give Russia a possibility to declare further deoccupation of Ukraine's temporary occupied regions as Ukraine's direct attack on Russia. Then the war will be declared and they could conduct forced mobilization.
The integration of these territories into Russia would represent a major escalation in the conflict. This is because Moscow would then be in a position to say that it is defending its own territory from Ukrainian forces. The territories also have a strategic significance for Russia. For one, the annexation of these territories will cause supply chain disruptions of Ukraine, cutting key transport links. Second, the territories also produce coal and are home to some substantial factories, with Zaporizhia being home to Europe's largest nuclear plant. Also, a referendum annexation to gain legitimacy over occupied territories has a precedent in Russia's recent past. When Russia annexed Crimea back in 2014, a similar referendum was held in the territory. The vote was criticized by Kiev and the West, which imposed sanctions in response. And for more analysis on this news development, we are now being joined by Fred Weir, who is a Russian affairs expert. He joins us from Moscow. Fred, welcome to the broadcast. As we've been discussing, this is a significant development in the war. Separatists are announcing annexation referendums in a series of coordinated moves. Moscow has welcomed this. How do you see this all panning out?
Well, Vladimir Putin is scheduled to speak in less than half an hour from now. So I guess we'll get a clear idea of what his longer intentions are. And following his speech, the defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, is meant to give an address. So it's something really serious in the wind. These referendums are part of it. Today, the State Duma, the lower house of parliament, did pass a series of laws which would set the terms for a state of war and mobilization. So I strongly suspect that this is what's coming, that Russia will not just declare these territories now into integral parts of the Russian Federation, but that they will use the regular army, which hasn't been much used to this point, to defend the new borders. I suspect a major escalation of the war is in the offing, and at home a tightening of screws, perhaps conscription on a wider scale, and mobilization of reserves. Russia does have the capacity to greatly increase its involvement, its military involvement in Ukraine, both in terms of numbers of troops and the types of weapons and tactics they employ. I fear that this is what we're going to be looking at in the pre-winter period to come.
Right. Fred, you're saying that you clearly see an escalation in this conflict. This is all happening as global leaders address the UNGA, all under the shadow of this war. There are calls for a peaceful resolution. With the latest development, do you even see that happening?
Sadly, no. I think there was a chance early in the war for some kind of a settlement on the old lines, a neutral Ukraine, maybe some implementation of the Minsk Accords for the Donbas. That all went out the window under murky circumstances that are still yet to be clarified. And everything went into the battlefield on both sides. NATO doubled down on its support for Ukraine, and lately they seem quite euphoric about the chances for Ukrainian victory. The Russians are grimly retrenching. As you will see tonight, I'm pretty sure Putin will be talking about exactly this, where the war goes from here. And I don't see any potential for a negotiated solution in the near term at all.
Right. Fred, thanks so much for all that perspective. Thanks for joining us on the broadcast at this hour.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Now, we also spoke to a journalist, Ksenia Kondrativa from St. Petersburg, for the latest. Listen into her inputs.
Commenters from Donetsk and other areas have said that, probably that's not the greatest time to hold mass referendums because the polling centers can be attacked. That's the immediate threat. But we know that these calls are not happening for the first time. We understand that with Ukrainian army advancing and recapturing yesterday, the first, I believe, settlement was recaptured in Luhansk region that was controlled by the separatist People's Republic, Luhansk People's Republic. So, of course, there are concerns and people are scared. But I've not seen any comments on whether it's possible, how quickly it can happen, and what the main point is, what will change on the ground, even if the separatist republic become a part of Russia, because the territory of Russia has already been shelled by Ukrainian army. The bordering areas, bordering the Kharkiv region, the Belgorod. There have been casualties, not mass casualties, but there have been, and you know that some military targets were targeted by Ukraine in Crimea. So what will really change if now at this moment, these republics join Russia? I don't really know, and I've not really heard any, comments that I could share with you, any analysis that I can really share with you.
WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.